Our next presenter is Tom Debevoise and Denis Gagné. You're quite familiar with Denis from all our last 2 days and today, and I will introduce Tom. Tom has a very extensive experience in different business rules, business process management area. I remember the time when he was a chief specialist in such companies as Signavia, Bose, even Oracle, right?
Right.
And in several years, last years, Tom was extremely interested in natural language processing and using this more human-oriented decision modeling facilities. And when generative AI came to life, Tom jumped on the board right away, and he did a very interesting presentation during previous years using Trisotech together with Denis, and they both concentrate on the so-called knowledge worker Copilot. And I also have to tell that during previous 2 days, Tom made very strong statements that went against common wisdom that GenAI always hallucinate. And I hope you will be able to prove that it's not the point. That's what you said,
Okay.
and you will demonstrate us this. Tom,
Okay.
Denis, go
All
ahead.
right. Thank you, guys. Let's just jump into it. And all right, so way down. I'd like just to set the context here. We've given this, Denis and I have given this presentation a number of times, and what we have discovered that it's very difficult to understand what we're trying to do without giving a demonstration up front. So we kind of like have flipped the script today, and we're going to jump right into the demonstration and then explain what happened, because essentially we're not just building a process that uses prompts and AI. We're building an artificial intelligence that's observing things in the background and assisting with the knowledge worker. So we're going to do the demo. I'm going to explain what happened and what it did and how it did it, and then we'll do a brief explanation of natural language understanding, which is a huge topic, and then conclude our presentation. So let's set the context, right? Knowledge work is, again, ever increasing portion of modern business, because a lot of the processes that would require people to actually manually do things have already been automated, and even AI is starting to affect the fringe of that. So the core people that we're talking about, your engineers, your project managers, your program managers, your technical workers, clinicians, all of these people who have to have very skilled experience and education to do their work. That's knowledge work. And we haven't really, what we want to do is to try and tackle some of the processes, let's call them loosely processes, that they are engaged in. So we don't really, they're not really processes in the conventional sense, right? So if you're working on a clinical case or some type of contract or a sales contract, essentially there's an inflow and an outflow of various meetings and notes and email that occur as we are conducting these cases, right? As this is ongoing, you have to comply with rules and regulations and the guidelines and the standard operating procedures that govern that particular case that we're doing. So as a consequence, as we're actually completing one of these, they're actually cases, as we've already discussed what the cases are in the background. So the reason it's a case right, is that essentially as after we initiate, like start to manage a project or a program or a contract, right, the different stimulus, including the calendar, the document, and the emails that come in, can affect what's occurring within that particular case, right? So it doesn't, if you take the knowledge worker viewpoint, it doesn't really follow a conventional case. Denis, did you have any comments here or kind of like set the framework for that?
I was muted,
Hello?
sorry. Typical mute.
That's right. Yeah.
I think you did a great job. Fundamentally, it's aligned to the notion of case, certainly aligned to the notion of case in CMMN, where you have a particular context. The context is either your contract or the particular project you're doing or the particular clinical guideline or clinical plan that you're trying to follow. And as you're doing that, all kinds of information come in, the different data pieces, structured, unstructured data, different communication, different events, and you must react to all these communication, these events, these new data within the context of the work you're doing. And that's why we've been calling knowledge workers swivel chair integrators. They're basically trying to integrate all these different sources of information with all these different systems.
Awesome. So, and I think a lot of us have had a lot of experience doing process modeling, and I know throughout the years of talking to business area owners and subject matter experts, you would occasionally encounter processes like this that, even though they have, you know, tight guardrails and a strong procedural element to them, they're all based on exchanging spreadsheets and emails and everyone voting on a particular thing. So the most common one that struck me would be like metal building manufacturer. The guy who installs a metal building on a site, you've got to go in and do the site prep, do the permitting, do the environmental compliance, and there's all these back and forth that, so while the metal building manufacturer is an expert of assembling that building, we're also an expert of actually placing that facility on site. So let's just talk about our demo. The reason I like the real estate example we presented this last year is because the real estate transaction contracts are very complex. They have, at one time I counted up, they have almost 44 different conditions in them. They can have up to 22 different emails that are generated, and they're all dependent on the type of financing and the different rules and regulations, right? So we're just going to pull one example out of that. But keep in mind, as we said, this could be any type of contract or regulatory workflow, anything where conditions and what we call deliverables, where someone has to do something in order to accomplish this objective, could be applied. We are. What we're going to see is that this contract, Pat, who's the transaction manager, is going to ask the AI to initiate a case for that home sale, right? The AI is going to look at the contract, pull all the contract schedules and interactions with it, and then we'll go through a wood-destroying insect example. So keep in mind, as we're looking at this demo, that we're jumping around through these 4 different roles, right? So Pat is our transaction manager, or the real estate agent who's actually trying to get this house sold. The inspector would be someone who's actually going out and doing the wood destroying inspection. And then we have the real estate broker, the top overview of this. So they're interacting at the bottom with the Copilot. The Copilot is monitoring what's going on and trying to provide assistance. So at this point, Jacob, if you could start the demo. Jacob. Awesome.
We start in Pat's Google Workspace, where she is a transaction manager who is going to be managing a new real estate sale. We'll demonstrate how the Copilot enhances Pat's workspace to help her complete this contract. The Copilot will create a new calendar and record the important events. Here are Pat's existing contracts. The knowledge worker case will add 4 new contacts based on the information in the new sales contract. Next, we have a dashboard that displays the terms and conditions of the contract and the status of the deliverables. We'll examine how the changes created by conversations and documents are reflected in the deliverables status and conditions. Pat has a new contract for the sale of a property at Leonore Lane, and she will send this contract to the digital assistant. Now, let's switch back to Pat's workspace and begin working on the case for that contract. We will open the draft email, attach the PDF of the contract, and send it to the digital assistant. The Copilot initiated the case assistance and immediately created several draft email messages requesting property inspections. The Copilot has created a calendar for the contract, and the events that the knowledge worker needs to monitor are placed on the calendar. The most important being the settlement date, when all the terms and conditions of the contract must be met. The Copilot has also created the 4 contacts for the buyer, seller, buyer's agent, and seller's agent and recorded them in Pat's contact list. Depending on their role, these individuals are included in emails, scheduled events, and meetings. The Copilot created an entry on the dashboard that Pat will use to monitor the progress of the sale. The dashboard includes terms and conditions, with a criticality rating indicating the importance of a particular item to achieving the objective. Additionally, a sentiment score measures the tone of email communication, ranging from -1 to +1, with negative and positive conversations being rated accordingly. The same is happening with evaluating deliverables, how critical they are, and what the sentiment of the conversations is. The dashboard indicates that the 2 deliverables have had draft emails pending approval to move forward. Now we will return to Pat's workspace and use the draft message to request a wood-destroying insect inspection of the property. The draft email includes the important contract variables, the seller's name, address, email, and phone number. It also includes a request to schedule the inspection. Pat will complete the email with the inspector's email address and name and send it. Upon returning to the dashboard for that case, the Copilot has noted that the deliverable was requested. Now let's switch over to the inspector inbox. The inspector opens Pat's request and replies with a schedule. When we look at the dashboard in Pat's account workspace, we see that the Copilot shows the deliverable as being scheduled, and when we return to Pat's calendar, we see that the schedule is shown for the date and time stated by the inspector. Now that we've returned to the inspector's account, the inspector will forward some information to Pat regarding a conversation they had. The information on managing termite damage does not appear to be the deliverable requested. The Copilot understands the conversation in the attachment.
So this is important because what's happening right now is that there's information that is shared that is related to what's going on.
When we return to Pat's
but not
dashboard,
relevant to
we see that the
accomplish
PDF that
anything.
the inspector sent can be viewed with the link associated with the deliverable. We would also note that all of the artifacts, such as the originating contract, that are attached to the case will be clickable on the dashboard. Now let's return to the inspector's inbox and forward the results of the inspection to Pat. The results are in this scanned image in the PDF and include important handwritten notes that indicate evidence of termites. Let's return to Pat's workspace. The Copilot recognized from the email and the contents of the attachment that the requested deliverable was provided. This demonstrates the importance of conversational understanding both in the text within the email thread and in the documents that are provided. Because the inspection is complete, the Copilot creates a draft email for Pat to review, edit, and forward to the stakeholders in the contract. The Copilot has summarized the results of the email threads that created the deliverable and the contents of the report. If you see that the handwritten notes were correctly extracted, this includes the check mark. As an aside, the date on the scanned document does not match the date that I created this demonstration. Also, it's important to note that in a real estate contract, the critical date is the earliest date that you can inspect the property before closing. Links to both files are included here. It's up to Pat to decide whether to include the information that the inspector sent. In a real-world scenario, different conversations and different files can be sent back and forth, and it's important not to constrain or expect that the conversation will flow in exactly a predetermined sequence. Now let's return to Pat's dashboard and ask the digital assistant to summarize the results or the current state of this case. The digital assistant reviews calendar events, the status of various terms and conditions, and deliverables, and then summarizes the key points that Pat needs to focus on. Again, this is a recording of a straight-through actual sequence, and the dates correspond to Sunday, July 27th. Now that the deliverable is complete, the criticality is 0 and shows green. The sentiment of the discussions is positive, and this metric is also green. We have reviewed the process for deliverables. Let's discuss how the terms and conditions are updated. In this example, we will update the buyer credit report by sending a message to Angie, the broker. These factors are updated according to the conversations that take place around this case. We return to Pat's inbox and send an email that discusses the credit report. We send a discussion of the credit report to Angie, the broker. In the paragraph, some of the extraneous things that happened are discussed. Upon opening the property closing folder, we notice that the label has been applied to the email Pat just sent. You can also see the thread concerning the request for a WDI inspection. A case may have dozens of emails associated with it, so this is useful for locating the messages. Once again, we return to the dashboard, and we see that the credit report has been marked as received, the criticality is now green, and the sentiment of the discussion is positive.
That's it with our little AI-generated voice. I will share my screen again. Can everyone see my screen? Did I do that correctly? Yes. Okay, all right. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, obviously, but what we're trying to achieve is not taking the position of the knowledge worker, but just trying to assist them with some really basic things like making certain that the information that they need in order to properly draft and send requests for deliverables and respond to different situations is provided to them, right? So, and this gets into several aspects of the knowledge worker. One is what we talk about inbox triage, right? Everyone does this. You go into your inbox, you look at all this stuff that's going on, and you try to figure out what you're going to address and how you're going to do that. So, so what the knowledge worker Copilot does is it's going to label that information that it considers a part of that particular case, and move so that they can see that in their inbox and they can go to that particular label. So every time a particular artifact is submitted in the context of the case, we take that artifact and we move it into Google Cloud storage, right? Most of these contracts, for instance, in the state of Virginia, you're required to keep all of those artifacts for 3 years, right? And then the standard practice is 5 years, right? And most legal departments have these types of requirements for keeping the artifacts. So we don't hand files around so much as keeping version controls of that. So every time a PDF comes in, we extract that PDF, and that allows us to have access to the text of it, and we can put it into the context of the conversation, the deliverable, the contract, and the conditions, and decide what what the next step or what is going on with that. So, and then of course, we have a separate calendar that we're managing as all of this is going on. So, so we're contextualizing, monitoring, and understanding a conversation, right? And to me, that's a key breakthrough in terms of what the large language models can do, right? Is it perfect? No. We're not going to take over the communication, right? We're going to try to understand what the communications are occurring and assist with the knowledge worker and the person who is actually working with them as to what's going on with their with their case, right? To do scheduling, to add a contact, to take a particular artifact and forward it to the right person and categorize and so forth. So, and we have, again, what you're not seeing is that we have actually executed hundreds of scenarios, and a lot of them are related to real estate, but transactions. Many scenarios have been executing against this model to kind of build up what we're going to cover in a bit, the natural language understanding and the text act. So let's just talk a little bit about natural language understanding. So in about what NLU is evaluating free text to get some information that will be useful in a digital context, right? So we can do things like entity recognition, understanding names, addresses, dates, schedules, and so forth. That's one level. And the large language models are very good at that, right? Sentiment analysis would be, is the conversation good, bad, or neutral? And then syntactic parsing would be the syntax is, the present, past of the structure of the information that's provided in the communication. So chatbots, voice assistants, all kinds of systems are using this. Obviously, the knowledge worker Copilot is too. So, in terms of natural language understanding, right, these conversations occur in a context over an extended period of time. What we're doing with the knowledge worker Copilot is we're gathering all of that conversation, meeting notes and files, contents, and putting it together so that we can hand it up to the model and have it evaluate what's occurring within the context of that particular case. So a case may have received a deliverable, now it's time to get it reviewed and approved. Or something may have occurred within the case that needs to resubmit that, right? So and that may take place over a period of weeks, right? So or days at least. So we know that the larger, if you guys are using ChatGPT and so forth, you can go in there and save your context and how you're working with it over a period of time. But in terms of what the knowledge worker Copilot does is we can have many, many different cases ongoing, right? And when that information comes in and new conversation occurs, right, we can reevaluate our understanding of that conversation. So what's the relationship between the symbolic and sub-symbolic AI is right. In terms of the context, we're assuming, and it's pretty much obvious, right, that in terms of either a condition or a deliverable, that there's a channel that is ongoing, right? A conversation is taking place. It's either opened or it's ongoing, right? So it could be, please provide a deliverable, please schedule the deliverable, please review, please approve, and so forth, right? So the symbolic AI, right, is sorting out basically which case are we talking about, which deliverable or condition are we talking about, and then which channel are we working with, right? And then it takes that information, right, and hands it to the large language model and says, what's going on with this thing, right? And so the outcome, basically, the outcome will say suggest what the next step is, or whether this is an ongoing discussion, information, and so forth. So that changes. It'll either maintain the state of that channel or it'll move it to the next step. So that's without like getting deeply and showing you that's how it's working together. And right now I don't, some of the chat GPT 5.0 and some of the others have some ability to create actual process capabilities, but I don't see anytime soon it really subsuming what we're doing in BPMN in terms of hosting the case, the channels for the case, and providing basically a storage for that context and so forth. So the combination, I think, is going to be ongoing for a very long time. So anyway, I've been going very quickly here, but I don't have a lot more. Denis, can you pipe in here and kind of set your context, because we've been working on this for almost 4 years now.
Yeah, this has been a research project of ours for quite a few years, and we've been presenting at DecisionCAMP every year, showcasing our progress. So one thing that is important to get out of this is that if it seems quite natural what happened, it's because we spent a lot of time to make it natural. We didn't want this to be a burden on the knowledge worker. We wanted to be an assistance to the knowledge worker. So we made sure that it's not intrusive, not blocking what the knowledge worker is doing, but always helping. So the knowledge worker can take his own action, change the calendar, do anything that he needs to do, and the assistants will be in the background readjusting everything. Another thing that is very important to note is that although we've been showcasing real estate, we can do that with different type of contracts or legal document. Basically, the bootstrapping of all this is to gather the information out of these contracts, all the different terms, all the different stakeholders, all the different deliverable that needs to be made. This is all extracted and is used as the bootstrapping for the context of that case. And then as conversation, document, and events are happening, the knowledge worker Copilot will support the knowledge worker in doing the right action at the right time by providing draft and support and scheduling things in the calendar. And that way, the knowledge worker burden is greatly reduced while he's still in control and responsible and accountable for the work that's being done. That's a very important factor that we've been working on. Where the challenge is to understand the complexity of the conversation. So, as you know, as individual, I receive on average 200 to 250 email per day. So that's my inbox. Of that, some emails are about a particular project I'm doing. Other emails are about other things. People are trying to schedule with me different things. And the knowledge worker is able to support this context because it's able to understand the conversation and put it in what Tom called the right channel, so in the right context of the particular case, and will advance these different parallel cases in there. And that's why I highlighted during the demo, when the wood inspector sends an email with an attachment of a PDF explaining what wood destruction means with termites and all this, that's an informational piece that has no direct burden on advancing the terms and condition of the contract, but it is related. So it knows to keep it in the context, but it's not triggering any fulfillment of any terms and condition of the contract. So I guess we're open to questions if there are any.
I think to follow up on that point is where the real power starts to get in here is that we're not constrained by any data model, right? As you know, going back to real estate, perhaps the buyer has an issue with the time that the bus arrives in the morning, or some related thing that the people who are managing the knowledge workers and understanding what's going on you have a new element of information that wasn't there before, right? So we're not, because we don't have a fixed data model, right? We just have information flowing in. You can take that information over time and kind of like, how did we respond to the different things that happened in the conduct of this complex process? Maybe we're making a metal building or doing some type of laboratory inspection and so forth. Parallel issues are not ignored. So anyway.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure it would be a lot of questions, and we have enough time. Okay, let's go. Questions? Okay, please, people, be more active. I don't want to be the only one to ask questions. Well, I have plenty.
Go ahead.
Can you give us some idea how you set this up?
What?
How did you actually set all this up?
How do we set it up? Go ahead.
So there's a two-phase process behind it. So there's a first phase where there's an analysis of the contract or the context setting, and out of that we'll extract all the important concepts and entities and stakeholders, and that will set the general scaffolding of the case. And then once that's in place, we'll correlate through correlation the different communication, put them into the context. And when this particular event or document happens, then we have decision and processes and cases, sub-cases that are triggered. And these will run to accompany that. So there's kind of like a two-layer, there's a meta level of setting things up, and then there's the actual case that is used as a context. And then within that will trigger, I don't remember the exact count, but there's hundreds of processes decisions in there. And all these
So,
processes,
like-
decision,
Yeah.
are generic. They're not specific. It's a process on how do I handle a new deliverable. It's a decision of what do I do in this particular case. Hopefully that helps answer, Alan. And Tom, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just that you start with the boilerplate of the document or the procedure that you're working with, right? And then you would create what we call entity extraction, where we gather all that into contacts, deliverables, conditions, reviewers, approvers for each of every little detail within that boilerplate. And then the specific instance, that tells how to take a specific instance of that contract out and then feed it back into the process itself. So,
Thank you.
so, and again, I would say, as I say, this was really not possible. This is a well-known problem, right? That no one has really solved, and it really wasn't possible until the last two or 3 years, right? That we have gotten, the models are consistent enough to be able to go in and say, well, if it's owner financing, then they have to submit a asset availability report, right? So the number of permutations within that contract, it's very easy to set that up with the large language model, because I can just simply say, when this happens, do these things, right? Whereas before you had all this code to try and extract that information. Anyway.
Okay. More questions? Okay, I just wrote down what I heard during the demo, and one word was Copilot noted receiving of email. So Copilot noted, it means you do have some event management system, some message queue, and it redirects this event receiving of email to the right person?
Yes. So fundamentally,
The
the notion that you mentioned are the right notion. That's not exactly how it's implemented. So we based what's going on the notion of speech act. So based on the conversation, you can extract what the intended action is, and based on stakeholders, you can then do the correlation. So that is done at the communication level, because communication may come through email, through SMS, to different type of channel that we have to then, yes, generate quote unquote an event that the case and the process and the decision will be able to deal with that event.
Yes, Google Workspace and Office 365 is the same thing. Whenever an email is received, it's published in public.
Okay, let's assume that Copilot. Let's assume Copilot received email, and this email, according to this demo, tells you that somebody found termites over there, and it includes, and this is, so it's in text of automatically generated email. So you use ChatGPT or another LLM to analyze this email text and come up with this idea of termites found, and the proper actions would be initiated. Is it correct?
Yeah.
And in this moment, analyzing this plain English text that could be expressed in hundreds of different ways, this is what you, Tom, argued yesterday, that there are no hallucinations here. It's really termites. It's not something else. It recognizes water, bad water problem and termite problem. It would be no hallucination. It would not create something else there is some cracks in the walls, right?
Yeah, so
Well,
exactly.
yeah.
So the point is that we're more relying on the understandability of what's provided rather than generation aspect of the LLM. So what we're leveraging of LLMs mostly, it's trained as an adaptive natural language understanding processor, which it's excellent for. That's what it is, really. That's the strength of it. And by that, we can extract the correct entities, the correct sentiments, and all that without having it to hallucinate new things. We're not asking it to generate things, we're asking it to understand things.
So yeah, when we set that up, we say, was the report good, bad, or indifferent, or something? We characterize the output, right? And so the prompt that's provided with the text of the report is very simple. It would say, was there wood destroying, was there evidence or damage, right? So you can set that up with the text, and it's not a long, complicated script or undetermined, right? So that's why we're assisting. We're not going to take over his evaluation. But if you look at the wood destroying insect report, there's a checkbox which was within in the demo that said there it's present, right? So it's like a very simple characterization.
So I hear that it wasn't in your demo, but I hear that you have prompts. It means you have human in the loop that can confirm that automatic analysis and understanding of the email text was correct. So you need the prompt. You need to ask. Somebody should ask this question.
Well, that's the draft that's written. So they put the draft in his inbox, right, that says we received this report result. You have to read through to make sure that the information was correct. We wouldn't automatically send it. Maybe if it was some very simple domain, you would forward it, but something like that. We're just saying, here's our suggested evaluation of the results. It's in this draft email. You go in there and look at it. All of the contact information is in there. The format according to the organization's standards are there. So the time saving, it's part of that element.
I just want, I don't want to criticize, I want just to present yesterday's panel point, and everybody on panel agreed that the hallucination is a feature, it's not a randomly compared case, and Gary was very specific about this, but you quite aggressively defended that it would be no hallucination, so I want to give you a chance now to defend this position on this particular example. Analyzing text of email.
Okay, if I write a prompt, randomly select A, B among the letters A, B, C, right? I will always get A, B, C, A, B, or C, right? So if your prompt narrowly defines either through the domain of the output, either through the explicit direction of the prompt or through the short shot or long shot examples, right? Basically, it's not going to give you another answer, right? So you can control the output of the prompt, right? The fear of the hallucination is that, I give you, please give me A, B, or C, and you get F, right? That it just doesn't happen. I mean, yes, yeah, if we were looking 2023, yeah, weird stuff like that would happen, right? But right now, and then secondly, if within that narrow domain, right, if you ask to explain the results, right, it's pretty good at it. Now, it will give you a good explanation of why it chose A, B, or C. Now, so that's why I'm saying my thesis would be we need to come up with another explanation, because, as Denis points out, the cost is very high. It's very expensive to ask it to give you A, B, or C, right? So we're talking about like low latency, like sometimes the knowledge worker Copilot is actually going to run a prompt, say 20 or 30 times for each knowledge worker a day or something, right? It's not going to be thousands and thousands of those things, right? So, and then, as I say, it's entirely possible to write those prompts to restrict the domain either through the examples or through the actual explicit definition of the prompt. So, anyway.
Okay. I will ask another question. Let's take on your words that it does not hallucinate on when you give ABC, so it would not produce F. Let's agree with this. And one more thing that I assumed good LLM-based tool should produce. In your case, you mentioned that you actually ran hundreds of different scenarios, of similar scenarios. Do you see that the system is really learning from its own experience? Or do you have any evidence of this learning?
No, because most of the prompts that we write are so simple, right? Like, think of the termite inspection report. Did this termite inspection report provide evidence of damage or structural damage or existence, or could you not determine what happened, right? So you give it ABC, right? And the chances of that, you've already got a fail-safe, like, I didn't know what happened, I couldn't understand, right? And you're passing that through the user. So, but in the vast majority of cases, right, for probably thousands of wood-destroying insect forms, it's going to get it right.
So Jacob, there is no learning component to what we created. Yeah. It's a reactive system. So it's a system that reacts to events and to communications and to documents, or however you want to define the event. And the system will act according to deterministic way through processes, decision, and case elements. So the only place where we're leveraging the LLM, it's in the natural language understanding aspect. So, and which it's excel at doing. Now, if you allow me a second on hallucination, I semi-defer with Tom. So we know that hallucination are a feature of these models. It's part of the fact that, as Carlos mentioned, recent research showed from OpenAI that they said it was their reward function that was forcing it to give an answer, and therefore sometime inventing an answer. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that came out, which is very interesting, is what we know now, and there's mathematical proof, that if you look at the knowledge that an LLM gathers, and you think of it as some kind of a diagram, a shape of something, and it has all its knowledge, the LLM will actually start hallucinating when it's trying to traverse that edge of the realm of its knowledge, for two reasons. One, it doesn't have knowledge about it, and because it's forced to answer, it will traverse that line, that boundary of its knowledge, and that's where it's going to hallucinate things and make up and generate things that are outside. But if you're operating within the circle of its knowledge, it's going to be very efficient, and that's where at temperature 0, it's going to give you the same results. Again, for us, in this particular context, we're only doing natural language understanding. We're not doing generation of answers. There's no answers generated by the LLM in the context of what we're doing.
I like that expression, operating within the circle of knowledge.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, last chance for other people to ask questions. We need to go for break.
Okay.
No questions? Okay, guys, you can just send emails directly to Tom and Denis. I would say what they started 4 years ago. It's extremely brave research. They put themselves in position when everybody can criticize them. They selected one particular business case, very interesting. They created this dashboard. They deal with emails, with calendars, and it opens so many opportunities. Even scheduling appointment, probably they can look inside scheduler and how busy the schedule is. It's a lot of problems what we all solved partially previously, and now the integration part of this, probably it's not only natural language recognition, we can avoid this through human recognitions, but it's an extremely challenging job, and it's a beautiful area for applying generative AI right now, and hopefully not only generative AI, other AI components. Tom mentioned machine learning, and I just, on behalf of all attendees, want to express our gratitude and hope that next year you guys will show us serious progress in this direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.